haven't been able to join us, so they're able to join us. So you can as well start by introducing yourselves in the chat box and just getting to know each other. Thank you. Good evening once again to those that have just joined us. If we can be at least a bit patient for 5 minutes or so, waiting for those that are waiting to join so that they can join us. In the meantime, we can just have mini introductions in our chat box. Thank you. Good evening once again. Good evening once again. My name is Buso Kanye, and I'm going to be your host for today. First of all, I'd like to address a few housekeeping rules that we have. We're going to be having interpretation. And also, please remain mute if you are not speaking, and also switch off your videos so that we don't distract those that are part of the meeting. And also, please be patient for the delays and the technical glitches. And if you probably have any questions or submissions that you'd want to bring to the floor, please raise your hand using our Zoom function. I'd like to introduce myself again. My name is Buso Kanye. I am part of the GCE Youth Action Group. And GCE is a youth group elected by youth and students to represent their local, national, and regional perspectives, broader conversations, and activities. I represent ZINASU, which is Zimbabwe National Students Movement, an institution from Zimbabwe that caters for academic freedoms for the students in Zimbabwe. Also, today, our side event is organized by Global Campaign for Education, Youth and Students, which is formerly known as GCE YAG. GCE YAG is the largest civil society organization working to promote and advance the right to education as well as transformation to education. So we've seen throughout the formation of GCE that most of its advocacy has been around advocating for education and also the crisis around post-pandemic, focusing on protecting quality, inclusive education during emergencies. So GCE presides themselves in youth and students. This event brings together youth and students to discuss this advocacy and the campaign they've undertaken on education emergencies, including building resilient organizations to accelerate the key recovery of education post-COVID-19. So we thank you so much for joining us once again. So today we're here as GCE YAG, and we're going to be having a side event, which is UN's Economic and Social Council, ECOSOC, Youth Forum, as it provides a platform for young people to engage in a dialogue with member states and other actors. This is an effort to voice out their views, their concerns, and galvanize actions on how to transform the world into a fairer, greener, and more sustainable place, guided by sustainable development and goals, our SDGs. So moving on, annually, the ECOSOC Youth Forum opens applications for organizations to apply to host a virtual or person-side event. The youth and students within GCE submitted an application this year for a side event, and we're pleased to inform you that GCE has been awarded the opportunity to then host this side event. So today's side event will be in accordance with the pillars of SDG 17 of Global Partnership for Sustainable Development under the auspices of SDG 4. GCE's youth and students will present the work they have done to advocate and promote inclusive and sustainable innovations in education. In accordance with SDG 9 and need for global partnerships, and lobbying in building better education post-COVID-19 in accordance with SDG 17. So the side event will take a form of a panel discussion. We will have presentations from the students and youth that exist within GCE, and the event will provide key recommendations and a call to action by youth and students, which will be shared with governments, calling for sufficient funding for education to be widely accessible post-COVID-19, The key messages and recommendations from this meeting will be presented in a policy brief document as the guidelines of the side events in 2023 ECOSOC Partnership Forum, informing the UN Secretariat. So today's speakers will start the discussion around education in emergencies by Brain Builders Youth Development Initiative, BBDY, Abedin Olasabo from Nigeria. Thank you so much, Abedin. He was going to give us a brief presentation. So maybe if I could have him, Abedin.
Thank you very much, Ciso, and I sincerely appreciate you for that brilliant recommendations and welcome remarks. I want to say congratulations to every one of us this year, especially as young people, as activists working around education. So my presentation will be basically around the theme of ECOSOC and with particular focus on education in emergency. If we discover in 2019, we have about 256 million out of school. And in 2020, because of COVID-19, we discovered that 1.6 billion students' schooling got interrupted. Unfortunately for us as well, in 2021, we also discovered that there are 2 trillion hours of in-person learning loss. Everything has happened not because of anything, but because of the education crisis that we were having before and the COVID-19 pandemic that aggravated the issues. So it is not also just enough for us if we are talking about the number of out-of-school children, if we are talking about the number of students who their school got interrupted, or if we are talking about the hours of learning. If we do not talk about, which was the category of, children who are out of school. And that's why I say across different platforms, when I got to talk about education in emergency, that when we have concrete data to work with, solution would really be exponential, expedient, and will be faster. So for the children who are out of school, we have girls who married early contributing to 50%. We have children who could not afford school fees, which contributed up to 35%. We have children with disabled parents. We have children living in peri-urban areas, which contributed about 4%. Children from minority language contributed, 30%. So that data is really giving us an idea of, the caliber. Then we move to issues around financing of education in emergency. You will quite agree with me as activists, as stakeholders, that education in emergency remains, underfunded, especially against the backdrop of, the rapidly increasing rate. What I mean by that is, if you look at, the data for education in emergency, you will see that, under the food security, we had about $27,759 million. Under health, we had about $5,967 million. Under nutrition, we have about 5,000 plus, water as well. But when you go to the education, that's the next slide, Bosiso. When you go to education, you will discover that education only had $2,593, which is the least as far as the sector is concerned. It really shows this data, the source of this data is from Geneva Hub. It really shows that, we are sitting on the keg of gunpowder if an urgent action is not taken right away. And that's the reason why I appreciate organizations like the Global Campaign for Education, because this conversation is extremely timely. Then I move to the Nigerian experience. I quite understand that, some of our experience, look peculiar. COVID-19 really contributed to the number of out-of-school children in Nigeria. It is alarming and embarrassing that Nigeria has more than 19.7 million out-of-school children in the world. That's one of the first 3 number of out-of-school children. We didn't just get here by miracle. COVID-19 contributed to it. Poverty contributed into it. Issues around insecurity. I know you will have heard about the Boko Haram insecurity in Nigeria. Issues around sociocultural norms of the fact that, a female should not be sent to school. Like we still have those sociocultural norms in Nigeria, especially across the northern part of the country, that believe, sending a female or girl child education to school is a waste. And not only that as well, we also have the issues of early marriage. I talked about the early marriage point the other time, that 50% contributed into it. Then inconsistent government policies as well around the issues of education in emergency is one of the major challenges contributing into the numbers. And of course, our own intervention as an organization. Again, special thanks to the Global Campaign for Education. We've been working with the Global Campaign for Education since 2020, and we have been able to achieve a whole lot with this partnership. We have been currently, we are advocating for EduTech, and I'm happy to tell you that three different states in Nigeria has adopted the policy that we built during COVID-19. We have Lagos State having what we call the ECOBEST. We have Edo State having what we call the EDOBEST, and we have Kwara State government having what we call the Kwara Led. So it means state government are now listening and incorporating, policy of education technology into, their budget framework. We have also organized workshop and training for teachers, for you people, and for campaigners as well. We have simplified the research document title harnessing technology reports into local languages. The reason why we are doing this is because, for us to achieve sustainable development on education in emergency, there's a need for us to carry everybody along. So we translated the reports into three local languages named Hausa, Igbo, and Yoruba, so that people at the grassroots community as well can get accustomed with it. We also understand that not every one of us will be online, and that's why we also introduced the issues of radio engagement. We are also building coalition of, young activists, young campaigner, and civil society organization around education technology. We also produce what we call the facts and sheets and issue brief, because if you want to engage with policymakers, there's a need to simplify that bogus. Now we'll give them an idea of what we're talking about. Last month as well, we also organized an edutech debate to look at the issue of artificial intelligence. How is it improving? Will a lot of people lose their job? How is it influencing education as well? So we invited over 40 secondary schools from across the nook and crannies of the country to come and debate on issues around artificial intelligence. All this would not have been possible if an organization like the Global Campaign for Education as well has not been funding us and supporting us with, training. So this slide talks about some of the pictures from the engagement, from the radio to the debates to the engagement to translating, some of the documents into local languages as well. So for the theory of what we are doing as an organization, and I know what other colleague of mine will be doing, has to do with the GCE's theory of change, which has to do with funding, which I just acknowledge that they have provided for us, capacity development, which all about training, collaboration. I have a few colleagues of mine here who are from African countries, who are from the American region, the Asian region, through the JAG as well. We have been collaborating to provide, a platform for stakeholders to get involved. So it's all within the Global Campaign for Education Movement theory of change. And of course, the GCE platform as well has given us a leverage to, reach out to a larger number of audience. So I move to the next slide, which has to do with recommendations. So yes, I just talked about the GCE theory of change. Our own recommendation would be for the Global Campaign for Education and for the United Nations, for member states who are here listening to us as well, and for the coalition of young activists or education activists focused on education in emergency. There's a need for us to also, beyond having student representation as well, have youth representation across board, across, the GCE board, across, our organization board as well. While it's also expedient that all students are equally represented, it's always good as well to say, we have representation from the youth aspect as well. So there is also a need for national coalition again around education to be spread across board. I'm thinking, of course, the one we have in Nigeria should be much more strengthened. The one in Ghana, the one in Zimbabwe, the one in Kenya, across different African countries, because I discovered young people have the competence, they have capacity and character. And when they are provided platform, like the GC has been providing us with their own theory of change, it really shows more young people will be interested in joining advocacy, in mobilizing support for education in emergency, and in collaboration, which is at the heart of every implementation we need to do if it's going to be sustainable. Then another recommendation would be for us to provide more training opportunities and empowerment for students and youth. You would quite agree with me that it's extremely important to continue to build the capacity of youth and students. When we build their capacity, we have invested in them to make informed decisions, to channel grievances of people, especially in the grassroots community, who ordinarily will not have access to attend ECOSOC virtually now or be in New York like I have. So, and the last recommendation would be also to GCE and other member states as well to get more youth and students for global spotlights. For example, I'm here today and I've attended about 5 sections within the last 24 hours, talking about the need for more young people to be at conferences like this in New York, at the Transforming Education Summit, as the UN high-level political forum, at the UN General Assembly, at the UN SDG Summit. This opportunity will provide young people who are doing something at the grassroots community an opportunity to talk about what they're doing, and as well get much more support and collaboration, and will even serve as motivation to others that somebody somewhere is looking at what you're doing. So I'm going to conclude by saying education emergency is here. we have a choice. Is it that we continue to hold conversation and continue to talk about it without providing solution, or we choose the route of solution? And that's the reason why I will also shower encomium on the Global Campaign for Education. They're not just empowering us, they're not just training us, they're not just building coalition, they're not just funding us as well. They are trying to turn some of these recommendations into a policy document that will be followed keenly. So accountability is extremely important, so that some of these talks will not just be here, and in the next year as well, we are still here talking about, ECOSOC side event, talking about education in emergency. So there's a need for us to have like an accountability mechanism. Maybe I'm proposing this to Global Campaign for Education as well, that Brain Builders Youth Development Initiative is interested in collaborating with them to have like an education in emergency tracker, so that we see member state promises, if they are achieved at the end of the first year, then we do like a monitoring and evaluation framework to see if there has been more of action beyond the talk. Thank you very much once again for the opportunity to speak with you. And I sincerely pass it on over to my humble moderator, who is also a member of YAD. Thank you, Busiso. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Aberdeen. My favorite of what you said was, can we be not all about talking around education emergencies, but also see ourselves as agents of it? Can we act to it? Can we ask for funding? Can we get funding? Because normally when you've got an advocacy issue and you feel there's need for you to speak about it, it's quite easier, and the information is easily dispersed to a lot of people when you've got funding, because you've got flexibility. So to every stakeholder who is in here with us today, please know that these are some of the organizations that need support, not just only funding, but also let's just stand for the cause. And also we need to know that after COVID-19, a lot has happened, especially for developing countries, especially the less developed ones. Speaking from someone who's coming from Zimbabwe, it's always an issue that is close to our heart, because these are issues that are happening on a day-to-day basis. So would like to act on it, and would like to also see every one of you coming up to stand with us also to act on it. So thank you so much, Aberdeen, once again. And our next speaker is going to be Karel. She's from ANSEFA. So Karel, she works with ANSEFA, and she's also part of the GCE YAG. She's a youth and education advocate. She's passionate about health and human rights and access to education and policy making. So this young lady is one of my favorites, because she's very articulate, very slow when she's talking, but she always has to mention that it's always important to have educated and youth for us to have accessible education, especially us coming from African countries where it's always a hassle to get funds for the education and fees. So over the years, she's taking up leadership roles such as the Commonwealth Club of the University of Yaoundé in Cameroon. And above all, she believes in uplifting others. Karel, I would leave the space to you. Is she on, Karel?
Hello, thank you, Lucy. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Hello. Can you hear me? All right. Thank you. Yes. Thank you for sharing the screen. All right. So I am very happy to be with you guys today, to taking part in this side event, and to have the opportunity to share with everybody around the table on the issues of education, and specifically education in emergency. So education, as we all know, is essential for children's well-being, development, and future prospects. And in the case of emergencies and pandemics like COVID-19, education becomes even more critical as a means of providing stability, protection, and hope. Throughout this presentation, we will discuss the impact of emergencies and COVID-19 on education, as well as how we saw it at ANSEFA in the period post-COVID. Education in emergencies refers to efforts to maintain and restore access to quality education in crisis situations, such as natural disasters, pandemics, and conflicts. Humanitarian emergencies, such as conflicts, mass displacement, natural disasters, climate changes, and health crises can hinder access to education. Many children of schooling age are in need of educational support because of the situation of crisis in which they find themselves. Some are totally deprived of access to food. Some face wars and internal conflicts, and therefore have to move from their initial homes to safe spots. In certain situations, others have to stay indoors to protect their health, as was the case during the COVID-19. What we generally notice from emergency situations, please can we move to the next slide? What we generally notice from emergency situations is that there is slowdown or total shutdown of schools, instability, shortage of resources, insufficient funding, and shortage of teachers. The uneducated children tend to be vulnerable to a future of poverty, get more easily drawn into violence, and lack the complex skills so important to their society's reconstruction and development. In long-term crisis, education can be a critical part of providing meaning in life with a sense of normalcy, protection, and hope for children in time of crisis. But despite the fact that education is this important, in times of crisis, it is the first sector to shut down and generally the last to reopen. Limited resources are allocated to it, and little or no proper follow-up is associated to the strategies put in place to provide education. I will not go into details with statistics because we all know what the education background has been since the outbreak of the COVID. At the level of ANSEFA, in the post-COVID, ANSEFA carried out surveys to assess the impact of COVID on education in the African context and proposed recommendations to help control the situation. These surveys were aimed to roll out the framework of monitoring COVID-19 impact in the African education systems. As the surveys permitted us to reveal that the contributions of coalitions and participations at national levels help to mitigate the impact of learning on learners. Though measures were taken by governments, their implementation constituted a serious problem. Please, can we move to the next slide? Thank you. Strengthening the capacities of national coalitions on advocacy techniques in the era of COVID-19 would be a good asset to improve the impact of the advocacy and the actions. Coalitions assisting in bringing together actors from different sectors, such as the health and education, would enable achieve a greater impact. That is, if we work together, we are sure to make greater success. And from these results, the following recommendations were proposed. National campaigns around the COVID-19 using audiovisual materials. Encourage re-enrollment in schools by focusing on students' risk of dropping out. Lobby for an increase in the budget allocated to education in spite of the health context. Lobbying for reduced harmful tax incentives to corporations. Another survey on the impact of COVID on the schooling of adolescents in Francophone West Africa, whose results are yet to be published, portrayed that parents, teachers, and education authorities observed a decrease in the performance of students during lockdowns. We equally noted an increase in cases of pregnancies when schools reopened, and adolescents found themselves in toxic and insecure milieux, and increased number of school dropped out when schools reopened. As recommendations, we propose providing pedagogic support to students, extending social protection measures, ensuring effective returns to schools, reinforcing preventive measures against female violence, and taking care of them will go a long way in mitigating the effects of the health crisis observed in the education sector. COVID-19 has caused unprecedented disruptions to education systems worldwide, with school closures, distance learning challenges, and unequal access to technology. These disruptions affected marginalized groups, including girls, refugees, and children with disabilities. It equally deepened inequalities in education, particularly in low-income communities. It has also exposed the digital divide and the need for innovative solutions to ensure access to education for all. The recovery work ANSEPA has been into aimed at restoring access to education, rebuilding damaged infrastructures, addressing trauma and mental health needs, as well as promoting resilience and development. This long process requires involvement and collaboration at all levels. Thank you all for your kind attention, and sorry to the interpreters if I was a little bit fast. I just noticed later that maybe I was fast. Thank you, Busi. Hello.
Good day to everyone who's joined us. I'm sorry, our facilitator is currently having connectivity issues, but we thank you very much to Carol on the presentation.
Hello, can anyone hear me?
We thank you so much for the presentation that she has done today. Whilst we wait for our facilitator, we will go on with the program. So next up on the program, as part of our presentation, is that we will be having discussion by the two people, which is Lutfi Adin from ASU. So ASU is the largest student movement in Africa and a very dominant force on the continent and beyond. ASU organizes all students in Africa from the basic level to institutions of higher learning. ASU was started in 1972 and currently is present in 54 countries in Africa and is at the forefront of and fights for free and equal education. Today, presenting for ASU, we will be having Lutfi Adin, who is a policy analyst and a young, passionate youth activist and researcher. She's currently a master's candidate in development studies at the University of Johannesburg. Her research area is around governance and public healthcare in policy implementation in Gauteng. She got her BA degree from the University of Witwatersrand and her honors with joint majors in international relations and political studies. Her focus area includes women and youth development. Today, she presents ASU as a policy advisor in education policy and advocacy for ASU. Over to you, Lutfi.
Thank you so much, Amelia. I think I'd be doing a great injustice if we don't introduce Carmen at the same time because we're presenting simultaneously.
Thank you for that. So alongside Lutfi, we'll also be having Carmen presenting on behalf of GSF. GSF is formerly known as the Global Student Forum. It is the global union of school and university students. It is the umbrella organization of the world's major representative, independent and democratic student union. It defends the educational, cultural, economic, and social interest of more than 200 million learners worldwide. It does this in decision-making and spaces of international community. Presenting on behalf of the Global Student Forum will be Carmen. Carmen Romero got involved with the student movement in Spain for the first time in high school. Since then, she's held multiple positions, which one of them is being a board member for the Global Campaign for Education. She is the former president of the Student Council at the Complutense University of Madrid and the former president of the National Unions of Students in Spain. Carmen also served as the member coordinator of the European Students' Union and is a founding member of the Global Student Forum Steering Committee, where she presented the voice of more than 20 million European higher education students in the 2020 and 2022 mandate. Carmen also holds a bachelor's degree in political science and public administration from the University of Complutense University of Madrid. She also holds a master's degree in international politics. Thank you very much. Over to Carmen and Lutfia.
Thank you very much. I'm gonna share my screen. I have to say that after all this presentation, I feel a bit old, like so many things have happened. So yeah, as Amelia said, we're gonna be, Luftia and I, presenting what has been done so far by student-led organizations, and we're gonna be linking this to SDG 17, which is global partnership and development. We would like to briefly introduce what is SDG 17. In case you're not familiar with it, it's a vision for improved and more equitable trade, as well as coordinated investment initiatives to promote sustainable development across borders. It can be broken into 5 categories, which are finance, technology, capacity building, trade, and systemic issues. And as we always said, students and young people, I wanted to add nothing about us without us, because we're actually going to explain what student-led organizations and youth-led organization has been doing in terms of cooperation, not only for sustainability, but also for the improvement of education and systemic issues in our education systems across borders. I'm gonna hand on to Luftia so she can present ASU.
Thank you so much. Firstly, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. We have people from all around the world. So thank you so much for joining this event today. I think it's very important that we as young people, you know, take the baton leading up to ECOSOC Youth Forum and in the process of it. So thank you, Carmen. I think my colleague has started this presentation off with a bang, introducing why this SDG is so important. As highlighted by Mile, All Africa Student Union is one of the biggest African organizations representing youth and youth-led work. We also strive to ensure that we are the umbrella bringing together all organizations from your different African countries. And over the years, you know, it has successfully led to 54 countries, which I think is phenomenal. And in as much as we strive to bring that harmonization amongst tertiary institutes and places of higher learning, I think we've also gone a step further over the years, and we need to update that, same as GSF. I think we've extended ourselves beyond just youth representation. We've also dealt with, you know, crisis, health challenges, mental health challenges, and challenges that we see around the world in terms of politics and society and where it's leading. And something I truly believe is that these organizations such as All Africa Student Union, which pushes for gender, which pushes for culture, sustainable development, entrepreneurship, these are bread and butter issues and issues that we see affecting society daily. And so I truly believe the All Africa Student Union, GSF, GCE, ZINASO, and the many other organizations that we have from here are microcosms of society. And the work we do as young people within these organizations goes a step further. So that is what All Africa Student Union is. We are a representation of everything that society, you know, engages with. Thank you.
Thank you, Luftia. And I'm gonna also briefly introduce what the GSF is after what Amile said. It was founded by the All African Student Unions, the Commonwealth Student Association, the European Student Union, the Organizing Bureau of European Student Unions, and OCLAE, which is the Continental Latin America and Caribbean Students Union. And basically one of the main reasons behind forming this organization. It was basically not only to find ways to cooperate among continents and among students-led organizations, but also to fight in many ways tokenistic approaches that many institutions and many organizations have as their own dynamics when inviting representatives and when inviting stakeholders. So we understand that it is important to bring the voices of students from all across the world, and especially by working together from the different continents, we are able to really and truly represent through our representatives with a, let's say, bottom-up approach what's happening in at the local level. Now we go to, oh, sorry. Some of the activities that we've been organizing in the past years in partnership with all the organizations that founded the GSF, but also with many other stakeholders such as trade unions and teachers unions, the GCE and many more.
Yes, so I think Carmen led me nicely into the slide. You know, it's so important to undo this concept of young people being at the table for numbers. Same with gender. Inviting me to a panel discussion because I'm a woman, because I'm a woman of color. Is it because of the content I provide, because of the qualifications I have, because of the work I do? So I think the most important thing that we need to do as organizations is equip young leaders to ensure that, you know, they are groomed well, they have the skill sets, they have the qualifications. There's an incubation system of mentorship. And this leads me to this project, which is known as ELA, which is the Academy in Leadership and Advocacy. And this included 60 students from different regional, local, and international levels with the Global Students Forum. And what this did was provide masterclasses shaping and molding the advocacy work and the campaigns, ensuring that mobilization is a concept, ensuring that we have, you know, strong leaders who are able to actually conduct the day-to-day work in these organizations, and at the same time produce the changes that will lead us to the SDG of 2030. So that is the Academy in Leadership and Advocacy.
Thank you, Luftia. There's also, sorry, my computer is running. So yeah, we also think student-led organizations and students that research is very important, and it's actually something that fueled our curiosity about what's going on in the world. And this is why we started this project led by Mania Klemenjik, which is a lecturer from Harvard University, who was also a student representative when she was a student. And we decided to create this massive research project that it's called Student Impact on Higher Education. And it's a global comparative project investigating students' agency and students' impact on, as I said, higher education. This project combined a group of 32 researchers from all over the world, but the fundamental part of it was not only being able to research by studying our own organizations, but also that we developed a series of seminars where different lecturers led by Mania, as I said before, basically received capacity building on how to research in a way, making student representatives to write also their own story and what was happening in their own continents. And we didn't only focus on the idea of student representation as such, but also like what and how student movements contribute to major developments in different countries. And in this way, we had, for example, we have a study case in Colombia on how students' organizations in Colombia were a fundamental part of the peace process. We also have how the in the case of Spain, how many universities and students in universities were fighting Franco's regime. So it's not only linked to what we do as student representatives, but also the importance of the student movement and the youth movement to basically bring change and support many other important fights, such as the fight for democracy and peace building, etc.
I think another important fight linking back to Carmen is about climate action and sustainability. In the year we find ourselves in, it's almost impossible to talk about sustainable development and growth and the SDGs with leaving out the environmental challenges we face, the climate challenges we face. And so, it is really amazing to see the work that ASU, GSF, GCE has engaged in, and the projects that we've embarked on. And when we talk to SDG 17, we talk about North-South cooperation and also South-South cooperation. And when speaking to that, we need to talk about the environmental impact and the inequality gap thereof as well, and why there's that big inequality gap. And so this leads me to two valuable projects, which was the Student Summit on Climate Action and Biodiversity. This project basically outlined rebuilding momentum and coming back strong. That was the catchphrase, the hashtag, and it was in a very crucial time, an unprecedented time, post-COVID-19, rebuilding the activism around the narrative of how to preserve the environment, how to fight climate change, and how to also build a stronger youth movement towards saving the earth that we're in. That was one program. The second one was the COP27 Student Pre-Summit, which I found also phenomenal in the sense that young people took it upon themselves to meet in person, once again, minding the fact that we just exited COVID, funding is a challenge coming from different parts of the world. And what young people then said is, we are no longer going to just attend summits and events as the additionals or the numbers, like we said. What they did was they had their own meeting, and it was in person to strengthen the student voice around COP27, which we know is one of the biggest climate action seatings. And they produced a list of demands and they ensured that there was a stronger and more, well-composed voice of young people demanding what needs to be done for them and how to make education, most importantly, environmentally sustainable.
Yeah, and of course, all these meetings, all this research, all this sharing and discussing, it's done with a purpose, which is enhance our policy and advocacy work. And for this, we wanted also to showcase some of other activities that we've been doing, such as the EA-EU Summit side event, and basically the Global Student Forum, together with the European Student Union and the All Africa Student Union, came together to issue a joint declaration parallel to this gathering in Brussels. So it was actually very, very important because it was the first time that two major student organizations in the world, together with the Global Student Forum, came together to Brussels to discuss jointly how to better cooperate and how to better also advocate for problems that, even though are different and the contexts are completely different, many times are rooted to the same systemic failures. On another note, we also develop a panel, an emergency panel on the crisis of Ukraine, and the beauty of this panel, it was not only that it was showcasing the struggle of students in Ukraine while the war was starting, but also unfortunately, the structural racism in new refugee crises. And this was showcased by the fact that many students from Africa who were studying in Ukraine were having a lot of problems to continue their studies, but also to flee the country and go somewhere else. So this is why, together with, again, ESU and ASU and the GSF, we convened this panel to address these important issues. And I will close also with the Justice for Africa joint letter to the IMF, that we recently gathered over 71 youth and student-led organizations from over 30 countries to sign this joint letter, basically ahead of the Bank IMF Development Committee meeting taking place in Washington, D.C. On the 12th of April. Since 2015, international injustices have cost Africa $3.8 trillion, despite global wealth growing. So this is one of the important data facts that we wanted to highlight. And this is why we managed, after a very long campaign, to have this letter joint signed by so many organizations.
Okay, I know we're probably over time, so let me just get us closing off this presentation. So there's three things that I think our advocacy work jointly has also highlighted, which is one being gender equality, two being decolonizing education, and democratizing education. So decolonizing education, School Curricula 101 was a toolkit that we compiled. We wanted to disseminate it today, but we will. We have many other events coming up. Carmen's working on it. I had the honor of being one of the authors of this with Peter Frank as well from OBSU. So we as young people gathered in Strasbourg, France, and we wrote about how we actually need to decolonize education from a Southern perspective and from a Western perspective. And I think, it would be great for all organizations to get this and then start incorporating it within their workshops. Number two, we had the Commission on the Status of Women, the 67th one. So this was like we're having a side event now. It was similar to that, young people taking up the baton and saying, how do we ensure that women within STEM, sciences, technology are included in the process of decision making and in the process of funding and all those important factors. Number three, we strive for democracy, and so anti-fascism, anti-capitalism, all these are crucial factors in the sense of advocacy and policy drafting. And so we were part of the statement in solidarity with students in India. As we all know, more than 30 students were detained due to the Modi question documentary. And I think it's very important for young people to have a voice on current social issues that are, moving away from the humanitarian perspective we're striving for. Nonetheless, I just want to tie up and say we've highlighted a number of phenomenal projects. I can talk everybody blue into the face about why young people should come together and work. But in summary, I think that, it is very important for us as young people to come together. And so today I urge everybody to please reach out to these organizations. If you have programs and campaigns that we can collaborate on in this world of globalization, please contact us. Let's be in touch. Let's create an ever-growing network in terms of funding, application for youth grants, and let's make sure that we as young people conduct SDG 17 and take up that responsibility to say, like Carmen said, a bottom-up approach and ensure that we do achieve the SDGs by 2030 through young people's work. Thank you so much. And in all of that, remember that a revolution cannot happen without women, as Sankara once said. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you so much, Carmen and Lutfia. So my favorite part of your presentation was how you talked about inviting students and youth for numbers and not inviting them for the issues facing them. And I've actually realized that it's to most of the organizations that exist out there, to them it's an issue of ticking the box of being gender sensitive, ticking the box of we had a student and youth representative, but what exactly did they bring to the table? I think that's something that we ought to look into as all different stakeholders here today. So next up, I'll open the floor for any questions, just for a minute or two. If there are any questions, then I'll take them now before we take on our next presenter. Any questions before we move on? Okay, I think the previous speakers have done due diligence, so because we don't seem to be having anyone having questions or clarifications or anything. So I'll move on to our next speaker, who's Tasneem. Tasneem is a youth development specialist and a trainer on civic education. She works as a youth engagement coordinator for her organization, which is Arab Campaign for Education. She works within the secretariat and also works with the youth into the frameworks and the structures of Asia education coalitions in the Arab world. So Arab Campaign for Education is an independent nonprofit coalition that consists of various stakeholders interested in education in the Arab countries. Asia works to unify, mobilize, the efforts to ensure the achievement of Education Agenda 2030 based on Incheon Declaration and the national education goals in the Arab world. Is she available, Tasneem?
Yeah, thank you, Basiso. But I think one of my colleagues, Sadaf Darwish, I think she wants to ask, she's raising her hand. Maybe you want to give her the mic before I start?
Yes, of course. I'm sorry.
I'm Sadaf Darwish from Afghanistan. I have a question. Why you don't talk about the Caribbean regions and what is the implementation student youths for Caribbean regions? Can you tell me information about it, please?
Sorry, can you repeat the question? I couldn't listen.
I think this program started in 12 until I think this program finished at 12 times, and during this program you don't talk about the COREP and implementation or take action was via your student in COREP regions. Can you tell me about it?
Sorry, so the question is about students organizing in the Arab region?
My concept is that I wanna take me information about the your student implementation in Caribbean regions for sustainable development goals.
I'm really sorry. Can you maybe write the question on the chat box,
Okay.
because it's really bugging?
Okay.
Yes, and sorry to disturb. Also, let's take note that there is interpretation. So yes, let's also feel free to articulate ourselves in languages that we feel that we are able to be heard. And yes, so for the question, please edit in the chat box, and then Carmen and Lutfia will look into it. Yes. Okay, so I'm thinking that for the sake of time management, as she types her question into the chat box, we can have our next speaker, and then Carmen and Lutfia, your question will be pending on our next questions after the next speaker. So yes, Tasneem.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Basiso. Thank you all for participating and giving me the chance to participate in this important and significant event. I'm Tasneem Lehmouz. I'm the Youth Engagement Office Coordinator at the Arab Campaign for Education for All. And I'm here with you today to talk about the importance of youth engagement post-COVID-19. Actually, I would like to start my intervention with a quote by Mr. Norbert Chadi, Chief Economist for Human Development at the World Bank, said that people under the age of 25 today, that is, those the most affected by the erosion of the human capital, will make up more than 90% of a prime age workforce in 2050. Reverting the pandemic's impact on them and investing in their future should be a top priority for their future. Should be a top priority for governments. Otherwise, these cohorts will represent not only a just lost generation, but rather multiple lost generation. From here, I would like to stress on the importance of youth and youth organization engagement and participation, and active participation. Currently, many youth at risk of being left behind in education, economic opportunities, and health and well-being during a very crucial stage of their life development. So active participation of youth and youth organization is crucial to recover from the impact of corona pandemic and to contribute in shaping a better future for themselves and the generation that follow. And I would like to stress on the fundamental principle that states youth for SDGs and SDGs for youth. Actually, the youth are the key element to address the repercussion of the pandemic and to take immediate action for structural transformation for an inclusive recovery toward the achievement of SDGs. Actually, before talking about the importance of youth participation, I would like to highlight some very quickly about some facts before the pandemic. Actually, as mentioned by the UN and ILO, people between the age group 15 to 24 create around 60% of world population. At the same time, 770 million young people and adults still lack of basic literacy skills. And youth unemployment rate in 2020 was 17.2. And we can expect that after the pandemic, this number, of course, increased. And the ILO mentioned that 156 million young people still living in poverty despite working. Actually, we are living in a very, like I said, in a very complex world before the pandemic. And we are now in a critical stage where it has become difficult to go back to the same patterns of learning and working that was prevailing before the pandemic, with the fact that there are many challenges are coming. In another word, there are opportunities arising, such as there is around 85 million additional jobs that are expected to be created between 2019 and 2030 in a green energy transition to achieve the 1.5 degree pathway. This means that the youth need to develop more skills to follow the new opportunity, but this adds additional complexity in youth life who don't have any participation in shaping their life. They are still excluded from decision-making process that affect their future. And after the pandemic, we are still living in a very complex world and the complexity are increasing. Actually, we are living in the post-pandemic context. And we share the feelings of fear, confusion, anxiety, especially about our future, in which complications are rising in light of the great development of artificial intelligence and the fear of its impact on the disappearance of more jobs. Besides, we witness now the climate change and the overexploitation of resources that threaten the livelihood of human and other species. We see continuing poverty, forced immigration, and violation of human rights. So the direct collaboration with youth organizations is a necessity for deep structural and cultural changes and a global shift towards more sustainable and equal economies and societies and equal rights. The youth organization have the best ability to analyze local context and identify the various and multiple needs for current generation and develop response mechanisms that are adaptable to different contexts based on a human rights-based approach. These response mechanisms, if developed from a youth perspective, will be able to predict the future and adapt to its variables. Although COVID pandemic posed major challenges to educational, economic, and health sectors, it has established a new horizon for exploring learning patterns that are compatible with the requirements of learning and working in the pandemic condition, and establishing a new culture of lifelong learning within these patterns. So we have to take the opportunities to emphasize the importance of youth organization, which comes in many scopes. The first scope is the context of the youth and youth organization. The youth are able to lead and initiate transformational change and social innovation. Therefore, it is a must to strengthen the right of participation for youth in all aspects of public life. This could be achieved by building youth leadership competencies. And this means that and goes beyond the idea of capacity building that target youth skills and knowledge to deep analysis of multiple cultural contexts and understanding of their impact on youth and young people. In addition to addressing the psychosocial impact of the pandemic on young people, taking into consideration to adopt inclusive approach. We need to empower youth to be responsible leaders at local, national, regional, and international levels with advanced leadership competencies and a strong motivation to take rapid, ambitious, and innovative action with international networks of diverse stakeholders. The other scope is partnership with the civil society organization. Youth are not only beneficiaries, they are not only volunteers, but youth are active partners. It is time for a true partnership between youth and civil society organization. The youth should be not included, should be not considered as passive participant, but they should be a driving force involved in public action and structures as equal partners. CSOs responsible for engaging people in advocacy were efforts to influence policies, especially in the field of education. But in the same time, and on the other hand, the responsibility of youth not to remain neutral and take the initiative and to have a leading role in shaping a better future for themselves and their peers. And here comes the importance of youth organization to organize and unify youth action within a shared vision. And the third scope of working engaging youth organization is working directly with governments to influence policies. Until this moment, the youth are still forced to deal with the impact of the pandemic in the field of education, work, health, and economy, in addition to the uncertainty that they have to live after the pandemic. So the governments are required to adopt policies aimed at creating and enacting policy and regulatory frameworks concerned with increasing youth engagement and influence in public policies. But the youth have to raise their voice and demand this right. And finally, the fourth scope is strengthening peace and global solidarity. The pandemic proved that a human needs to live with each other, coming together for common good, and upholding the dignity of every human. It is necessary to consider the youth perspective in global solidarity as peace building because they are the key element for intergenerational solidarity. On the other hand, the youth are the most affected by conflict. While young people struggle to survive and obtain their minimum rights, they are usually seen as danger. Therefore, we must focus on youth to protect them from involvement in armed force and to ensure that they obtain their basic rights during the conflict period, especially education, work, and health. And in this occasion, I would like to stress and state my solidarity with my colleagues in Sudan who are suffering from the rising conflict. And we should, I hope you all pray for them for their peace and their survival. We are in contact with them and we hear their calls to help them, and we are really feel helpless and we want to help them, but we feel helpless and we can't help them. So it's a call for everyone to solidarity with our colleagues in Sudan. At the end, I would like to stress that any action taken for a better present or a better future must be inclusive for youth. And to engage youth, all stakeholders must work to build a real partnership with youth organization. Thank you. Thank you, Basiso, and thank you everyone for your time.
Thank you so much, Tasneem. That was a great presentation. I think my favorite of all was you having to mention the fears, the anxiety, and the depression that comes with not knowing what the future holds, which is a very true reality that we face in our different spaces. Also, it's always important to acknowledge how students are an important part of the policy making. So government officials should also be in a position where they are also willing and able to engage with students and youth as they hold the key to as the youth as the future for tomorrow. Thank you so much. That was such a great presentation. So I'll take questions, but I think would use the I've noticed that there was a question in the chat that we then requested Carmen and Lutfia would answer. It's in the chat. I guys in a position, and after that, we'll have questions regarding Tasneem's presentation. So I'll just give a minute or two.
Lutfia, do you want to go or should I?
Okay. I'm going to answer, but I think you can add on, Carmen. So thank you so much for the question. I think that, I can't really speak specifically to the Caribbean region, but what I can say is I'm not sure whose mic is on. If you could just mute it on your side. Busi or Mile. Okay. Anyway, as I was saying, I think what's important is that in whatever state you're in whatever region you're in, it's about, like I said, mobilizing the youth and creating small campaigns that can conduct the work towards SDG. And in mobilizing and creating partnerships among young people, that is conducting the SDG 17 itself. And if you have environmental issues, are you going and planting vegetable gardens within your local communities? Are you doing a cleanup drive? Are you doing a book drive for education, which is another SDG? So I think that would be my answer on a general level. And then, like I said, also incorporating yourself into GSF, speaking to Carmen and seeing how you can become a member, speaking to Lutfia and seeing how can ask to work with the Caribbean Student Union. So yeah, but I'm going to leave it to Carmen to add on as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucia. Yeah, so just to add on that, I think, of course, young people should be at the heart of the 2030 agenda. And of course, we need also to convene an intergenerational perspective. And this cannot be done without us. In that sense, there are like many different initiatives who are working in the Caribbean region, not only our member organization, the Organización Continental y Caribeña y Latinoamericana de Estudiantes, but there are also the Caribbean Youth Environment Network, the Sustainable Development Goals Youth Ambassador Program, and the Caribbean Youth Empowerment Program, and also some of the UN ambassador programs for young people. So in that sense, you can try to link up with them, but also with your local communities and student-led initiatives at the local level, because it's very important also to act locally and to start from the local to really find out what's going on around you and how you can better also help others. As Tasneem was mentioning before, solidarity is very important. And this is what we've been trying to build here as well. So I would suggest that you try to work locally as well. And if you're already doing that, you will find a lot of different organizations at the regional level and global level. And you can always reach out to us to seek for help or support.
Thank you guys for that one. I hope you answered. Tasneem, any questions on Tasneem's presentation? If they are, I'll give them a minute or two because time is not really on our side. So I'll be taking questions for Tasneem's presentation now.
¿Qué tal? Hola. ¿Podríamos hacer una pequeña contribución?
Yes, you may.
Yes, there's a hand, you may.
Bueno, hola. Muchísimas gracias por darme este pequeño instante. Mi nombre es Milagros. Me comunico desde Argentina en representación de la Escuela de Estudio y Desarrollo de la Intuición, del Foro de Jóvenes. Simplemente queríamos compartir que desde la Escuela de Estudio de la Intuición enseñamos de manera gratuita a todos los continentes que el hambre, la pobreza, las guerras y toda situación de desigualdad en la educación son producto de consecuencias que parten de los errores del ser humano durante siglos. Estas consecuencias que cometemos a diario como individuos y como sociedad se pueden evitar a través del desarrollo de esta capacidad que es la intuición. ¿Alguna vez se dijeron, yo sabía que esto iba a pasar y efectivamente sucedió? Bueno, ese saber interno, esa certeza es un mecanismo que se desarrolla, es la intuición. Te dice qué acción correcta hacer para evitar el error futuro y así no lastimar. Se estudia, se desarrolla de manera gratuita, solo es necesario tener buena conexión a internet. Otra vez gracias y dejamos en el chat más información para que puedan seguirnos en nuestras redes.
Well, thank you so much for that submission. Taking any more questions? Any before we move on to our next speaker?
I see there is a hand raised.
Carmen?
Yeah, I see there is a hand raised from Nicolas.
Yes, Nicholas, please go ahead.
Thank you, Sharon. Thank you of all. I'm again in France. Thank you for intervention of as possible to integrate it to developing into my idea of living in France to continuing in my French government to developing and a French tech community to integrate it of innovations of educations, health and security of our children of in these days. Mrs. The Prime Minister, Mrs. Dawn. My first questions after you chair, after directly after your organizations, have you got the possibility to continue in actions in contributing and speaking in French is possibility to consider. Je souhaiterais savoir s'il y avait la possibilité au sein de votre organisation de continuer cette action d'intérêt international dont le but de créer une communauté EduTech, donc comme la communauté French Tech qu'on a en France, et de savoir quels sont les études de faisabilité pour créer à l'échelle des 195 pays et des 1650 régions mondiales pour fédérer des communautés comme on en a 444 mais sur 52 pays actuellement, poursuivre sur la volée, je vais aller atteindre les 193 pays de niveau mondial pour mieux connaître ce qu'on fait nous en France, être notre innovation. Ma première question est envers votre organisation. Avez-vous la capacité, tant que moi, en tant que jeune de 30 ans, en Maine-et-Loire, en Angers, en France, de soutenir financièrement une action avec l'UNICEF, avec l'UNESCO et toute organisation pour mettre en place cette communauté tech à l'échelle planétaire et de vraiment d'avancer sur ce point? Je vous remercie. And you're just a win and finish.
Thank you so much for that question, Kazim. Are you able to take it up?
I think Walter's name.
Thank you, Bosiso. I think Nicholas' question was not only for me, I think for all of us.
Yes.
Actually, it was for me. It's the $1 million question because it's something we should have more meetings to discuss and to share ideas and co-creation of ideas of how to promote solidarity among all, because it's a need actually. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much, Tazim, for that. But I was actually thinking probably if I could add something on Nicolas' submission. It's actually something that's very important for us to actually know what youth and students in different spheres of, in different corners of our spheres are actually going through. So it's something that probably as the GCE we could look into to see if we could create a platform where we know what exactly is happening in our different places, and also to be able to put it out there and also be open for anyone out there to then come and say to the GCE Youth Action Group, this is what we're planning on doing. We're going to implement this also because this is a problem that we're facing and this is a solution that we got. So thank you so much for that one, Nicholas. So I'll be moving on to our next speaker. This one is a sister of mine. Oh, sorry. Yes, there's a submission.
I'll also put the email for GCE because they also stated around working with also other youth organizations. So please, you could also feel free to join our youth and student organizations and also doing some projects together, even if it means regionally or on a national level. Please feel free to email me to engage more with our youth and students.
Thank you. So Amelia is going to put the email in the chat. So I'll be moving on to our next speaker. Like I mentioned, a sister. Her name is Dr. Esther Simon. She currently serves as the Secretary General of Southern African Students Union, which is SASU, which is a regional body of the student unions that exist within the SADC, representing all the 60 member states. Esther Simon was the first female president of NANSO, the Namibian National Students Organization. And she's also an All-African Students Union Constitutional Review Committee member, a founder of Joyrise, a private academy, and a firm access to education activist. She's very passionate about education, community development, public policy, social justice, and also is a feminist. She is a board member for GCE under Youth and Students. She served as the youngest presidential advisor on the high-level panel in Namibian economy to His Excellency, the President of Namibia, appointed by His Excellency to advise and formulate a blueprint on strategic solutions to revive the Namibian economy. She recently conferred the honorary doctorate degree from the Helmholtz University in Benin Republic. Dr. Simon was also awarded by the African Youth Awards on the 100 most influential young Africans in 2018. She was also honored by All African Students Union via their She Game Awards 2020 with a Citation of Honor Award. Apart from being a student leader, Esther believes in strengthening bonds of solidarity. Like I'd also mentioned, she's a fellow sister and a feminist. Esther, if you could take up the floor, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Busi, for that introduction. Sometimes when people speak about you, you're like, okay, is that me? But anyways, I'd like to take the approach in terms of greeting. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon. I mean, we are all joining this call from different parts of the world. As the Global Campaign for Education in general and the youth and student constituents in particular, I would like to extend our heartfelt appreciation for all of you in the the youth and student speakers, Carmen, Lutfia, everyone that has spoken on this given call, but rather also really your participation, those of you that are joining us to just be able to listen to what the young people has been up to, youth and students from different parts of the world. I mean, Carmen has represented the Global Students Forum, Lutfia has represented the All African Students Union, Apidin representing a different coalition, and everyone that has given a presentation. It goes to show the different work that young people are doing across the globe, and we must say it's marvelous work. Our side event is coming along the sidelines of the ECOSOC Youth Forum, where we know that young people are gathering in New York to not only deliberate on things that they're doing, but also to paint key focus on the SDG 9 and SDG 17. And it is really very important for us to also reflect on the progress made towards achieving the sustainable developmental goals, for they are very critical in creating a sustainable future for all, where no one is left behind. And this side event is very close to my heart, particularly because when we talk about young people being at the center stage of capacity building, young people being at the center stage of governance, and young people also being key stakeholders, this is the events that we're talking about, because they do not only serve as people that just attend or they're just used to tick off attendance, but they are equally being key stakeholders. They're equally contributing towards leading the conversation and also towards giving resolutions and solutions to key issues that are affecting them in their constituency. This event, particularly that we are talking about, has been organized in accordance with the pillars of the SDG 17 of the Global Partnership for Sustainable Development under the auspices of SDG 4, a vivid reflection of the Global Campaign for Education, Youth and Student work done in order to advocate and promote for inclusive and sustainable innovation in education. While also in accordance with SDG 9, our focus has been on the need for global partnership and lobbying in building a better education post-COVID-19 in accordance with SDG 19. Through our discussion, ladies and gentlemen, as well as the presentations that have been made this evening, we have highlighted the importance of education in achieving sustainable development goal 9 and 17 to be specific. We have recognized that education is not only a fundamental right, but also a powerful tool for creating a more prosperous, equitable, and sustainable world. Sorry, at the beginning I was a bit fast. I just remembered we have interpretation, hence I'm slowing down. Well, your engagement here today is testament to the commitment of young people towards achieving these specific goals, particularly SDG 9 and SDG 17, which are the focus of the ECOSOC Youth Forum for this year. Through these events, as young people, we have the opportunity to share our perspective, the insights and experiences, as well as the key work that we have been doing in alliance with this SDG, and on also how to accelerate progress towards SDG 9 and SDG 17. Let us, ladies and gentlemen, not forget the important role that education plays in achieving these specific goals. Education is a powerful tool for empowering young people, promoting innovation, and building the skills needed for sustainable development. Let us also equally continue to work together towards a future where education is accessible to all and where no one is left behind. We always say nothing for us without us, but equally when we advocate for education for all, we say that every child, every deserving child should have access to an education that doesn't come with a price tag, an education that is not colonized, an education that doesn't alienate anyone. As we depart from this given event, let us then also commit to working together to also ensure that education remains at the center of sustainable development effort. Let us also continue to advocate for equitable access to quality education, promote innovation infrastructure and industrialization, and forge partnerships that can help us in achieving the sustainable development goals. I mean, as young people, we equally are key stakeholders, or we are also playing a part in these different aspects. So let us also forge partnership amongst ourselves to be able to contribute to the achieving or to the realization of this SDG. Allow me, as I move towards to the end, to leave you with famous words or words that are very key to myself. And I quote from Maxwell Peake, where he says, "The power of the youth is the commonwealth for the entire world." Maybe I want to repeat that quote. The power of the youth is the commonwealth for the entire world. Thank you once again to everyone who has participated in this event, and all the best for all the other ECOSOC Youth Forum engagements that are also still in the pipeline. Before we go, I would want to ask everyone that is able to switch on your video so that we can just take a quick selfie. I mean, what is a young event without selfies? Those that are able. I was really expecting a better turn up. Okay, thank you very much. Yes, yes, thank you.
Okay, smile.
When the elders need to smile, I guess. Good.
Wait,
Good.
I take another one.
Okay.
That's okay.
Are you done, Carmen?
Yes.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much to everyone for joining today, and to all our speakers and to our facilitator who's in absentia today. Thank you so much. Because of her Wi-Fi, thank you so much to Busiso, and looking forward to drafting the policy document from today's discussion. Bye.
Thank you.